We did a pre-application 2 months ago on, and so we've now submitted, the full application with, with escrows and looking to go forward. This is the, I know Mr. Plotsky's gonna get mad here. On the agenda, it says Neversink Drive and Christopher Street. We have titled it the Marion subdivision, but it is the property which, it's actually on both sides of Neversink Drive, down by the old radio station tower. And the proposal, as we indicated 2 months ago, is to proceed with a full application of a total of an 11 lot subdivision. The first part would be on what I'll call the north side of Neversink Drive. The northwest side, we are proposing a road with a cul-de-sac coming in off of Neversink Drive. And on that road would have 8 building lots, 8 residential building lots. And then on the southeast side, with the part of the land that runs parallel with both Neversink Drive and the railway property to the rear, is proposing 3 lots along that side of Neversink Drive. So what we have submitted now to begin the process of moving forward is a full application. Just some things with this project. Obviously, the road would be a road cut on a county road, so we'd have to go through county review. And the driveways, on the other side of Neversink Drive would certainly need driveway approval from the county as well. Due to the nature of the size of the lots and the quantity, we would also eventually need health department approval for the subdivision. So those are just some things, and certainly GML and all that the like. But we just recently submitted the materials to Mr. Fusco's office. I know he's done a preliminary reading of the map and give us direction as to what we need to address going forward. We wanted to just bring it on to the agenda tonight. It's a full application and address any further comments as we begin this long process. So.
Okay.
It's 11 lot? 11.
It's 11 lots, yes.
Okay, because Mr. Fusco's letter says 12.
No, it is 11. So there's 8 lots here and then 3 on this side. No, but it's certainly 11 lots.
Okay, thank you.
On May the 10th, John, you did submit a narrative for the project. It's adjusted to me. I don't know if anybody else actually received that narrative. I don't know what the email chain was there, but do you have a copy of that tonight?
The narrative?
Yeah, I would just like to have you read that into the record, because it kind of, again, says what you're looking to do for that. It's just this piece here. I don't know if that was an email or.
Yeah, actually, in this letter, you say 12 lot subdivision.
Well, I think during the initial pre-app, we were hopeful of 12 lots, but after that and further, engineering evaluation of what we can accomplish, we went to 11 lots.
Did you have that?
I don't have it with me, but I can read it.
Yeah, I just want to, you can change 12 to 11 if you want. Yeah, fairly.
So, yeah, I apologize. Yeah, it is 11. So encloses an application, preliminary subdivision plat, full EAF. The above referenced property, the site is 28 acres located in the neighborhood residential and rural residential zoning districts. There's a single family dwelling located on the property which will remain. A new 11 lot subdivision is proposed. Each new lot will be serviced by a private well, an underground sanitary disposal system. A new roadway is proposed from Neversink Drive for the lots located to the north. 3 proposed lots are on the south of Neversink Drive will each have their own driveway entrance. The subdivision will require Orange County Department of Health and the Orange County Department of Public Works. That's pretty much what I just said.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
It's just that it was presented as a. All right, so this was actually received by Fusco or the town, any of us on May the 12th, and, I mean, the 10th, and here it's the 12th, so, John, I don't think.
For clarity purposes, it's 11 new lots, but there is, technically it is a 12 lot, right?
Is that little
Because there is,
small?
yeah, because there is an existing dwelling there. So it will technically be 12 lots, with one being existing and then 11 new lots. So that is correct.
All right, well, back at hand, this was, we only received this on, all this material on May the 10th.
Yesterday.
So you, yeah, you guys just did a preliminary review?
It's a very preliminary list, so I can go over it very quickly, but
You wanna go over it, or you wanna wait?
I think we should probably have a chance to digest this, because I'm gonna have some more comments in, and then maybe offer a full set of comments at the next
Yeah,
meeting.
the comments that were written in the 2-day review, John, we'll hold off on that until.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's, you know, it's very similar to the project we're gonna talk about at the end, Rivendale, so yeah.
You know, 'cause we're all new to it 2 days
Yeah.
anyway, so.
But,
Actually, there's no, other than a discussion, there's no action on that application.
at this point, no, I don't think you can take any action.
Right.
I mean, at the appropriate time when we can, I mean, obviously, we wanna ask the board to do lead agency and then get the appropriate referrals out, to the, different agencies.
John, I have a question. On the first page on the bottom, you have a little piece that's marked part of lot 12. I'm trying to figure, go down further, right there, no, down.
Whereabouts?
I'm sorry.
Next to the radio
See,
station.
right here, right across the street from lot 9. It says PO 12,
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble seeing it.
right here. And I'm trying to figure out what in fact is lot 12. It looks like it goes all over the place.
So, so lot 12 currently, actually, if you look at the tax map, it's much clearer. What's happening, so the parcel actually is, currently is one parcel, but it's on both sides of Neversink Drive. So this is what I was referring to, is the 3 lots that we're proposing here. And then, this does encompass the existing house, which is right here.
So
I'm not,
I can't figure out from here what the final shape of lot 12 will be.
yeah, so it's a good question, because as part of this, and we certainly will need to clarify that, and I will, you know, I don't know the current disposition of Christopher Street, like I don't believe it's town, I think it's private. So we'll have to clarify that, because I think that's a shared right of way that, for those existing dwellings that are on Christopher Street. So when it says it's part of lot 12, the parcel may actually be part of the entire subdivision, or the entire lands. So at this point, we have, I'm gonna suggest that it remains with lot 12, which is the existing house. That's a great question, we've gotta clarify that.
And I'm sorry, because I couldn't hear the word. What is it that?
Oh. There's part of lot 12, I cannot figure out what lot 12 looks like. See, this is part of lot 12, but there's a road, and this is lot 12. I don't know what this is, so that's.
Oh, okay.
If you can figure out what lot 12 is, let me know.
Yeah, the lot line kinda all
So-
over the place.
Yeah, so what he's referring to is, so currently, if you look at the tax map, the lands which we've hatched here, so lot 12, it would, that's why it's a 12 lot, that's the existing house, that's why it's a 12 lot subdivision. These are 11 existing lots. So this land is a shared right of way,
Right.
which is Christopher Street. So he's referring to this piece here, but it would also include this land here. So like these little rectangles, which are all part of the parcel, but you know, they're not gonna be part of the new 11 lots, they would remain with the house.
Okay,
which is
so
lot 12.
Christopher Street is part of parcel 12.
Yes,
Okay.
it's a shared right of way,
Okay.
basically. There's basically 5 dwellings on Christopher Street, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these, and I have not looked specifically in the deeds relative to the shared agreement, but that's something we'll probably have to address it in the future. But that's what's going on there. That he's referring to this here, but it's also like this little rectangle here is all.
Yeah, the cutouts are a little unusual.
Yeah,
I
that's
see,
gotta be
now I
some
didn't
meets
realize
and
that
bounds
the
on
street
that
was
one,
part of the lot.
yeah, the street is actually part of the lot, but it's obviously a shared right of way for all those houses. That's a good question, yeah, we'll have to clarify that.
But that is a private road.
Yes.
Is there any other questions from the board?
No comment.
Anything else we can do for you on that one, John?
No, we'll continue with what we normally would, which is a SWIP and all the other environmentals. But, and I'm sure Al's office will continue to review it as well.
Okay. All right, appreciate it, John, thanks. Let's see, next one up, New Century, 517 Neversink Drive, the restaurant. This one's another one, just keeping heavier and heavier and more prints and more paper.
So yeah, I'm surprised that, I thought they were coming tonight, but I've been in regular communication with them. This has been bandied about for the last year as far as the specific direction that they want to take. I think we're at a point now where I believe that they are confident in the approach that they want to take with the property. Obviously, we've been before the board distinctly twice prior to now. I'll call this the third time. The first time was when they first purchased and wanted to occupy the property. I represented them to begin occupation of the existing property as a film production, hence the name New Century Film, which is an active use of the property. And then the second time that we came before you included adding the flea market component, which again is something that they want to run with the property. Have the opportunity to do that in the future as well. Currently, what I'll call the longer term vision for the property and what they want to do specifically centers around a couple things. In each of the existing houses, which are essentially residential structures, they have a desire to do like a catering business, not where people come and sit for food service, but to actually produce food that they would take elsewhere. So in essence, and it's for clarity because they don't want any issue with the building department down the road. They want to be able to produce food that they will then sell off-site. So that would run with the houses, and certainly we'll have to address that from a commercial standpoint because historically those two buildings have been residential. The other, what I'll use their terminology. They call the first building, the first barn, B1. The largest structure, B2, and B3. B3 currently they use just for offices that are in there. There's large portions of that building were never finished and are currently unoccupied, and they don't plan to finish them. Obviously, the largest building, the arena, they've used that predominantly to support the film production. But what I'll call the biggest goal of what they want to do with this current application is to make B1 a more usable building, specifically to create what I'll call a motel on the first floor, which will support people when they come for the film production, and then also create shops on the second floor of that building. So they have a very, what I'll call it, they're looking to expand that structure significantly, and that's the biggest part of the application. The other thing which I had identified previously, we have met with the county, and they want to create a new entrance a little bit further down Neversink, further away from 209. We have met with the county and they found that that location is acceptable, but it will involve removing one of the two existing entrances that are in off of 209. So with that, we're ready to move forward, with their full application, and wanted to obviously get any initial comments or questions and feedback from you, and then we'll begin to go through the process of moving forward with the scope. So with that, I'll answer your questions.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have many.
Just have one again.
Yeah.
Because I'm just going through my file, and there's all kinds of dates going back to 17, which had to do with the production company, but are we working on, for approval, 9/14/20, are those the date on the It would be on the bottom right end, next to the title block.
Yes.
So make sure you got the latest plans in front of you. I do have several.
So, John, let me get this straight.
Mhm.
So they want to operate a commercial catering business
Mhm.
out of what is currently residential structures.
Yes, they want to put
They
kitchens.
want to
in.
operate and for continued use of offices in one of the buildings. They want to continue to have the arena used for support for the film business. Then they want to convert the remaining building, which you identified as building number 1, to be a motel on the first floor with shops on the second floor. And in addition to those 4 things, they still want to do the flea market, whatever the heck thing is on weekends.
Yeah, I mean, originally they had hoped to do the flea market more frequently. It didn't turn out to be quite the endeavor that they expected, although they would like the option to continue to hold it in the future if the need arose.
Okay, you're gonna have to define.
Yes.
How does one need to
Well,
operate a flea market?
I think during the seasonal times, which was part of the original approval that we sought with you, is that originally they were looking to do it every weekend. That did not come to fruition. And obviously there's been a lot of challenges over the last year which made that difficult. But looking ahead, not necessarily at this current time, because I think we're still during some challenging times in large gatherings of vendors and people. They don't want to rule out the possibility that they may restart it, a year from now.
And so there's a lot of amended uses. There's gonna be amended use for the horse arena, there's gonna be amended use for the building number 1.
Well, the horse arena was always part of the film studio.
But they wanna put a partial restaurant in there, right? Or no?
No, the restaurant's gonna be in building 1.
All right, so
Originally.
But that already has a granted use, so they're gonna amend it for office space and the restaurant.
No, let me clarify. So right now, the large building B3 has offices in it. That's an existing condition, okay?
We approved, when it's
Yeah.
approved.
Yeah, I mean, we had identified that on a prior site plan that they're using that for office space. That's not being changed. And then what we call the multi-purpose building is being used for the film studio. That's not going to change. You're right. At one time,
Right.
initially, they had thought about locating the restaurant in the arena, but they've decided against that. So those 2 buildings will stay consistent with what we previously presented before you in an approved site plan. I'll say that other than the physical change of adding a new entrance, from a use perspective, What the current application centers around is this first building and then the two residential structures.
Well, in the zoning, can it be multiple use? Can it have a commercial kitchen in the basement?
Yeah.
And then residential above that, is that?
I'm still trying to understand, because when you just were making your presentation, you said catering service from the residential units.
Mhm.
And then you said a motel on the first floor, and
Yeah,
shops
the-
on the second floor, of building number
No,
one.
no, I'm
Is it
sorry.
now also a restaurant?
No, this building will have, all right, let me clarify. With the two existing houses, okay, they have historically been just that, they were residential structures, okay? What they wanna do is put a commercial kitchen in the basement of each that will deal with a catering service which is off-site, so people won't go there to patronize. That will be done off-site. Okay, the rest of what I'm suggesting is that building B1 is the one that's gonna receive a major alteration, okay? So they would do what I'll call a dormitory style motel on the first floor, and then the second floor would be shops and a restaurant.
Oh, now it's shops and a restaurant.
Yeah, it'll be a commercial space, yeah.
I think when you make this application official, I assume it's just a pre-app right now, or is it?
Well, I think we have an open application. We've done a pre-app
I
before.
think it's really important, because there are so many uses on this property,
Mhm.
that everything that you've talked about is put down on some sort of a map, even if it's color-coded and labeled building 1, building 2, building 3, building 4, up to building 72, and define what is existing and what you're proposing to do, because it's just impossible, I think, because there's so many things going on, to fully understand what you want to do based on talk.
No. Just to clarify, that is on the map. I don't know if you did the review, but that stuff is already on the map. Yeah, so what I'm speaking verbally is already on the map.
Because
Yeah.
one of Al's
Because
comments,
certainly-
Al's comment is, to avoid segmentation under seeker. We really need to be able to identify exactly, and
Well, I think one of the.
maybe on a map, but it's, I mean, Al reviewed it, I
Mhm.
briefed it over
Yeah.
for the meeting, but it's, sounds to me like it's very difficult to understand what is existing, what is proposed, and where, based on the map the way it is right now.
Well, I think there's a chart on there that, we could walk through of what the existing use is, but I'm certain, we could provide further clarity, we always can. And, obviously, the uses are gonna be paramount when it goes to the health department, because they're gonna want full definition in order to grant their approval, so. But yes, I agree.
Didn't we already deny that, the catering in the basement of those homes? I'm not mistaken.
Honestly, I don't think so. I don't know. I don't remember ever hearing catering. I remember hearing
remember
restaurant, but I don't remember
No, I
catering.
remember them, he came in front of the board wanting to put catering in the kitchen. And we said,
I think you might be right on the commercial kitchen part.
right,
of-
in
of
the
that.
house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think at that point, I think they were talking about having it be a commercial kitchen in the basement and residences upstairs.
Right. And we
If they're
said-
now changing the entire building to commercial, then maybe that's okay. I think we have to do a full environmental review and get a decent 239 response from the county, both DPW and planning. And, candidly, there comes a point, and I've been warning about this for 5 years, where you just say no, because but for the fact that they're not building a new building, I think, right? Everything's
No,
internal?
I mean, they're not, it's all internal to existing structures.
So,
yeah.
that's the only reason why I think they could argue that it's not segmentation. Because every time they come back, it's different. But I don't, to a certain degree, as long as it's a permitted use in the zone, and John will have to show that. As long as they meet the building department and the health department and all the other department reviews, I mean, if they're allowed to do it, you're allowed to do it, but they're pushing that envelope, once again.
The only thing I wanna add
Mhm.
is that 30 years ago, when the property was bought, 2 houses were put on there. I believe there's deed restrictions that those houses stay residential for no other use because they're just there for caretakers. There's no other use permitted for those houses. I believe that's in the written deeds.
John, you're gonna need to give me the deeds.
Yeah, I mean, that's news to me. I'm not
Yeah,
aware of
it's one of
that.
the
I'm not aware of that
stipulations.
restriction.
Okay, I'd like to see the deed, please.
And the other thing, even though there was no dining, even though they cooked, they did always have those tents. The weekend, they were cooking, they had tents, they were selling food, even though it technically wasn't a restaurant.
Right.
So you're saying, well, everything's gonna be sold off-site. You know, what happens when we see the tent up there with the,
Is there gonna actually be a kitchen in the proposed restaurant in building 1?
Oh, yeah.
well, what is, may I ask?
You can ask me.
Ask you, Glenn, what is your advice to us concerning the EIS? Because I know, I feel that I wanna, we've had this discussion for years.
Yeah,
We
I
said
mean,
there's gonna be a trigger,
at a
something-
minimum, it's a long form EAF.
Something's gonna trigger the, yeah.
At a minimum, it's a long form EAF. It's something which candidly I would almost defer to the engineer, but until John has an opportunity to really do a thorough review of what's being proposed,
Okay.
I need their input with regard to whether it's crossed that threshold.
Because I don't understand all of what we just said,
Right,
quite frankly.
right. I mean, with the for example, just guess to me, how many people is this I don't know what a dormitory style motel is. But how
Well,
many
it's
people are
22
you
rooms.
anticipating at housing?
It's 22 rooms, so.
I believe we had, that was once before, somebody had made a comment that the rooms are only 8 by 10 or 10 by
Yeah, so
10 or something. You made that
they're
wrong.
22 rooms, so they're basically structured as single occupancies, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the short-term, long-term, what are the,
Well, I remember having that discussion too, because originally it was supposed to be rooms for people who were actually working in the buildings.
Mhm.
Now it would appear there's no such restriction. Forget about the fact that enforcement is impossible, or near impossible. It appears that that restriction wouldn't even be minor, so this would be anybody, I could get a room. I don't know, maybe they're gonna be very nice.
Could people stay in there in those rooms, use that as an address, a legal address? Let's say, I know it's a motel, but if somebody was there for a
You mean
month,
as
2
far as-
months, could they say, hey, I'm living, this is my address, or?
Well, my understanding and the representation I'm making on their behalf is that it's transient, meaning it's not permanent living. They're not dormitories where you live there endlessly. You know,
A dormitory setting, if someone going to college, staying in a dormitory, which means they're there, 6 months or more in a dormitory. I mean, that dormitory kind of throws a flag up, like, you're not in today and out tomorrow, because you can just call just a motel and get it over with, not a dormitory.
Mhm. No, I understand. And I think we can define it, the board can put stipulations on that now.
Just our thoughts.
I would say, get me a copy of the deed, and we're gonna have to have a discussion with the engineer after they take a more thorough review, and determine just what type of environmental submission we're gonna require.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think it's an environmental impact, because we're not proposing any expansion of the property. It's just to reuse what's existing as far
How
as
many
structures.
people currently, let me just to argue that point for a moment, how many people currently work in building number one?
No one in building number
And how
one.
many people currently stay in building number one?
No one stays in.
And there's a substantial environmental change if suddenly you're gonna put 22 people living on one floor and having a restaurant somewhere else on that same structure.
Well, yeah, I'm not gonna argue that.
You'll lose the
The
argument
issue,
of
no,
using
the
one
issue
building
is
to
substantial. I mean, certainly any type of development is going to increase in intensity on the property. I mean, originally the property was an arena that had, a significant amount of people allowed to be on the property. So, as far as the use, I mean, any site plan I bring in here and propose a building, there's going to be an increase in intensity. The question is, does it meet such a threshold that requires an environmental impact study? I don't believe that's the case, but.
But as you identified, this is the third change with no such environmental review since the original proposed arena use. And I agree with you. The arena was designed to have a whole lot of people. And you know what? For about 2 weeks a year, they did.
Understood, yeah.
Right? And then the entire rest of the year, there were some caretakers and an occasional horse person. I mean, they didn't use it where they had the kind of demand that, and you know that if you're proposing 22 rooms, then we need to plan for 22, we need to review for 22 rooms times 52 weeks times 7 days times 24 hours.
Mhm.
I mean, that's just how it works. We have to do that.
Well,
And I know that
don't-
there are formulas and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying, I don't disagree with your statement that a long-form EAF is appropriate for this property, absolutely. I mean, I fully agree with that. I mean, an environmental impacts statement is a completely different animal to task.
And candidly, if it was just you and me chatting, I would defer to you because you're an engineer and I'm not. I mean, I did stay in a Holiday Inn Express. No, I mean, I'm not an engineer, so I don't know. But when the question's asked, my response is I have to check with an engineer.
Mhm.
So that's what we're gonna do. But, I mean, frankly, I think that both of us, both the applicant and the board, would benefit by A, clarification, which you've indicated you'll do,
Mhm.
or have done, but we just don't see it yet. And B, by producing that deed, because if in fact those houses can only be used for residential purposes, then half of this discussion is moot.
Rivendale across the way.
Well, I don't disagree. I'm not aware of the deed restriction on the residential
And there may
parts,
be
yeah.
none, but let's
Yeah.
look.
I mean, if there is one, then so be it. They're going to have to address that and go in a different direction. Relative to the scope of the first building, again, I think a long-form EAF is completely appropriate for the scale of the project, but, an environmental impact statement, I think is a completely different, that's reserved for much, much larger scopes.
I would suggest you have that discussion with the engineers, and then perhaps you can jointly say, yes, this is appropriate, or whatever the case might be. And clearly, I mean, I'm gonna look at the deeds and give the board my opinion as to that use.
And as far as the restaurant, John, I haven't seen the plans, is it 40 tables, 4 tables, 40 tables? How, do they have any idea?
Well, it's more than 4, yeah, it's,
Or a
think we have
rough,
a number of
a rough idea.
50 seats, 50 seats total.
Okay.
So that, whatever, how 4 per table, so be 12 tables, 50 seats. So,
People, traffic on that.
All right, John, I don't know, any other comments from the board? Anybody concerned?
Just waiting to hear from the engineer.
Yeah, well, John, you do have some comments on it.
These are the same comments from last month, regarding, just noting that, we're gonna need to get county DPW approval, health department approval, we're gonna need input from county department of health and, DOT. But Al's last comment that, he specifically wanted me to make the board aware of is that, the project has had numerous site plan proposed revisions. So the project has been segmented under seeker, and some sort of a master plan has to be prepared so that we can adequately get a handle on what exactly is, there's, if I'm not mistaken, 9 different uses that are being proposed on this property. And I don't think the board has a clear idea of exactly the intensity of each one of those uses with regards to parking, septic, water, and so forth. So, that's pretty much Al's comment number 7. We need to get a handle on exactly some sort of a master plan for this project so we know exactly what's being proposed.
Well, just to answer that, I mean, we have defined both on this current map as well as previous maps, the water usage, the sewage usage, what currently is in the ground, what has to be expanded, the parking requirements for each of the uses, all that's actually on the maps. So, and I'm happy to work with Al on addressing all of his comments, which we've always done, so.
Anything else? All right, John, we'll leave it, up to you and, you have your discussion with our engineers and, we have to set escrow, is that done? Because it was a pre-app, now we're,
Now, I think that there are escrows.
No, there's escrows in place.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, we have altered this plan several times over the last year, so that it's an open application. If the escrows have to be replenished, that's fine.
I think in terms of that master plan, John, you may want to clean up the application. Submit an amended application, no new application fee, but, make it accurate. Because it's certainly what you originally applied for is not what's on that plan.
Okay.
All right, moving on, number 7 on our agenda is the Rivendale, Never Sink Drive, 20 lot subdivision.
So, back in February, we had an extensive public hearing last fall. Obviously, it was held open for written comments. There was a lot of public comment. Portions of that was via Zoom, so there were actually comments made on the Zoom. A number of written responses. In February, we issued a written narrative addressing our position or our responses to the what I'll call the dozen or more significant comments that came up during the public hearing process for the subdivision. And so that was submitted. I know with cancellation of meetings and stuff, this is the first time before you since we issued that back in February. I don't know if the board has had a chance to review how we responded. I know Mr. Fusco's office issued a letter which I received, concerning his recommendations, so, happy to address the comments that we did in the written responses to the public hearing, and then we could talk about how we go forward.
Just for the sake of the public record, we should go through the questions that were raised and the responses. How many, what were the 21, how many questions, do you have that, John?
There were 16 total, what I identified that were not necessarily repeat comments, but 16 distinct areas that were brought up during the public hearing.
Just give me a second to get my find that. There again, we have quite the file already on this.
I think the guy that prints the letter is correct in small papers.
The comments weren't on the 20th of June last year, no.
Yeah, here. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah. That's it.
I just need that back.
No,
No, no, no,
Oh, okay.
you can use it, I just need it back.
Yeah, without going into detail, John, if you just want to summarize the topics quick,
Yeah, I
don't
can
want
do
you-
that. I mean,
You don't
it's-
have time to enter into this whole thing, but
It's
just.
part of the written it's part of the written record. I mean, if anybody wants to foil it, they're welcome to have it. So I'll just go through the points and touch on them briefly without reading everything. During the public, issues about the floodplain development, certainly portions of the property are in the floodplain. There's FEMA regulations and standards that have to be met in developing within the floodplain, which certainly is part of the subdivision and in any future development. So, just because you're in a floodplain doesn't preclude you from development, okay? Floodway, yes, floodplain, no. Protection of waters, certainly, again, we've gone through extensive, just for general statement, we've gone through quite a bit of extensive engineering and environmental review on this already. We've done traffic studies, we've done, full wetlands, threatened and endangered species. I mean, we've done the whole gamut, and so that's all part of the record. But these were comments that were raised. We certainly, as part of the project, any permits that are required, going forward will be achieved, and they have to be, as far as any DEC permits. Historic and archaeological impact, we did a full archaeological survey that came back, and SHPO has signed off on it. Traffic, we did a traffic study. It was submitted to both the county and the New York State DOT. We only got response from New York State DOT, which they requested that we put a traffic triangle on the plan. Emergency services, the plans have been submitted to emergency services as of this date. I haven't gotten extensive comments, but I do know that Huguenot Fire responded that they found it acceptable. Infiltration testing, obviously, we've already done extensive soil testing on the site for the on-site sewage disposal system. That will be witnessed most certainly by the health department at the appropriate time when we get to that. Additional soil testing for stormwater measures. I'm happy to have the town, obviously Mr. Fusco's office is, if they are willing to or wanting to, we can do joint soil testing so they can witness the infiltration. The proximity to the pipeline, we've been in communication. This is an important one, so I'd like to read this one. So, the Millennium Pipeline recently installed a new 36-inch diameter pipeline in the area known as the Huguenot Loop along the existing right-of-way located in the eastern section of the subject site. The installation is part of the Millennium Pipeline Eastern System Upgrade Project. The new 36-inch diameter pipe has a maximum operating pressure of 1,200 psi. Using the maximum operating pressure of 1,200 psi in the CFIR Technologies formula for use in determining the potential impact radius for standard pipe, the blast impact radius for a new pipe is 860 feet. We spoke, it says I spoke with Mr. Jim Wilson, a representative from Millennium Pipeline, who informed me that the new 36-inch diameter pipeline was installed in accordance with Class 3 construction standards. A Class 3 location is one where more than 46 homes are located within 200 meters or 656 feet of the pipeline along a continuous mile. This is an existing condition. The pipeline and above-ground facilities associated with the project must be designed, constructed, operated, and maintained in accordance with the DOT minimum federal safety standards, 49 CFR and 192. The regulations are intended to ensure adequate protection for the public and to prevent natural gas facility accidents and failures. The DOT specifies material selection and qualification, minimum design requirements, and the protection from internal, external, and atmospheric corrosion. Special construction standards were followed by Millennium Pipeline to increase the pipe integrity, such as increased pipe wall thickness, pipeline design pressures, hydrostatic test pressures, MAOP inspection and welding testing of welds, minimum cover of 36 inches, and the frequency of pipeline patrols and leak surveys. These must all conform to higher standards in more populated areas. These standards help to decrease the blast impact radius. It would also be noted that Mr. Wilson stated he was aware of the future subdivision and he has discussed it with Mr. Lauren McCune, the owner, when the pipeline was using the property as a contractor's yard. So that's for the record, that discussion. I'm sure that Mr. Wilson can provide any additional information if the board felt it was necessary at the appropriate time. Orange County DPW approval, again, the project will need that. We've already had the county out there to look at the existing entrance, which would be converted into a roadway entrance to the property. And that is an acceptable location, and they're happy with that. Orange County DOH approval, as I've stated numerous times, I'll just state again, when at the appropriate time when this project achieves preliminary approval, we have to go to the county and go through an extensive review with them as part of the sewage and water issues of that site. New York State DEC threatened and endangered species, that has been addressed, and there is no mitigation required for the development. Natural Conservancy deed restrictions, this was another one. If I may, I'll read it for the board just for its benefit. There are deed restrictions held by the Nature Conservancy on the subject property of the proposed Rivendale subdivision and the property across the street owned by New Century. As stated in a letter from Mr. Matt Levy of the Nature Conservancy to the town of Deerpark dated August 11, 2020, the restrictions were placed on the deeds when the property was conveying to Ginseng Up Corporation in 1985 and amended in 1995 when the property was purchased by New Hope Farms. A summary of the restrictions was provided by Mr. Levy, many of which were specific to the property across the street when it was used as a horse farm, such as dumping and storing of manure. The main purpose of the restrictions is to protect the Neversink River. The proposed subdivision will comply with all those restrictions. And obviously the restrictions can be, I made the statement that the restrictions can be placed on the subdivision plan. Okay. Special use permit. Single-family uses are, this was something that came up. This does not require a special use permit. This is a subdivision. Single-family residential is a principal permitted use in the zone. Special permits are not required as part of subdivision. Stormwater discharges, obviously, and Mr. Nozak can attest to this, that any type of development like this, will require a full SWIP, which we've already done a preliminary, and we have had preliminary review by Mr. Fusco's office, and then obviously that will result in what's called a speedies permit for the project at the appropriate time. Further development, we stated all along during the public hearing process and also in narrative format that there is no proposed further development of this parcel after this subdivision. There was questions about relationship to Dragon Springs. Mr. Lauren McCune is the owner and proprietor of LM Property Holdings, and there is no correlation between Dragon Springs and this property. So just for the record. And then the last thing is probably the point of most discussion tonight is the public repeatedly said that this project will require an environmental impact statement. I have my own opinions about it, but I think I'll defer to Mr. Fusco's comments at this time.
Right, John, thank you for outstanding. Thank you very much. Thank you, John. Any discussion on any of the points of topic that John touched on? Any comments, John?
Al sent his letter April 21st, and the board has it. His opinion is that, and there's a lot of environmental concern here. I think a lot of it, some of it may have been addressed, but given the scope of what's going on here, and the magnitude of a number of different significant issues, including a large-scale septic, the size of the lots, the environmental issues, that he feels, that's his opinion, that a DEIS is in order, and a positive declaration under secret. That's his letter. I discussed it with him, and he feels the same way.
I mean, it's not, 20 units in that area of the river, and then the septic system still crosses brook, it's still on the other side of that little, that brook that's on the,
Mhm.
northerly side of the property.
Yeah, yeah.
I just didn't change.
Are you yeah, no, we
Yeah.
haven't changed any of that, no. No, it's still 20 proposed, single-family residential lots, you know, with a central sewage system that is, yes, on the opposite side of that brook, yeah.
Lennon, what do you got to add?
Not much, when it comes to engineering, I defer to engineers.
What about the, positive deck on the project?
Well,
I mean, the
that-
triggers are there?
Well, I think that's a determination that the board has to make. Certainly, there were concerns raised by the public and identified by the engineers as to aspects of the environmental review that could be of concern and that may require mitigation. You know, with an environmental impact statement, basically, the board, through the applicant, reviews the various environmental concerns. So it would be water, sewer, traffic, aesthetics, all those things. And then if there is a concern that requires mitigation, then as part of that process, we identify what mitigation is required, and that becomes part of the plan as a contingency of approval. And some of it's gonna be deferred to DOH and DEC and stuff like that, but, you know, the thing that I did, the legal aspect to it was reviewing, because there's a homeowners association
Mhm.
that's gonna be involved in the maintenance of the central sewer system and also with maintenance of the property. So I reviewed that agreement so that it appears to conform, you know, it appears acceptable. Not that we sign it, we're not a signer to it, but it seemed to address the various issues that you would expect of a homeowners association.
So before, we never, did you declare us, Amanda, did we declare ourselves,
We
intent?
declared intent,
We never declared, we never got nothing back, right?
no, we declared intent, that was it.
Okay, before we even address the DEIS, we should, declare ourselves leads on the agency on the project.
You know,
What-
I have a question, I mean,
Sure.
you know, to my knowledge, I mean, we did a long form EAF part 1, has a part 2 been done? Which, you know, I think you have to do a part 2 in order to make a determination whether an EIS is even required.
So why don't we do this, because I think that that's not an unfair position for the applicant to take, trying to avoid the DEIS.
Sure.
So if this board were tonight to declare lead agency, and then ask our engineer to prepare for your review and adoption of part 2 to the long form EAF. Basically, part 1 is where the applicant says, here are the various issues, and this is what we think in terms of whether there will be impacts. Part 2 is this board saying, you're right, or these are issues that need to be identified and reviewed. And then I think part 3 is where you actually say, this requires more review, which would be the environmental impact statement.
So we would just, outside of the lead agency, we would just make a motion to propose that the applicant do a part 2.
No,
No.
our engineer does.
Or
Yeah.
our
We
engineer.
do part 2. So we're basically gonna go through and say, not significant, 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 not significant, and for your review to determine whether you wanna issue a positive declaration
All
or
right,
not.
we need a motion for you to do that.
First do lead agency.
Yeah, let's do that. I just need somebody to declare the Town of Deerpark Planning Board lead agency for the project.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
30 seconds, all in favor?
Yes.
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 And yes. Now,
I don't know that you necessarily need a motion, but it would be good to have consensus that you want your engineer to do part 2.
all right, so there again, we might as well do it in the form of a motion, it really doesn't make a difference one way or the other, so. We just need to have
I'll
a
make a
motion.
motion.
Yeah, for our engineer to do the second.
Second.
Teresa seconds?
Yes.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes, motion carried. Okay. So we don't do anything with seeker or, When DES doesn't wait for food stalls to get back to us with the determinations, right?
Part two.
Part two.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you know, are those, he mentioned deed restrictions are from the, when it was conveyed, are they in the record, the public record?
They would have been from,
I
85.
know, but are they incorporated in the record? 'Cause I'd like to review them. If they're in the record, I'll just go and.
I believe they were.
Yeah, they were
They
submitted.
are in the record?
Mhm.
Okay.
A long time ago, well, gotta remember that.
John, is there a trailer or some sort of camper on the property?
Not to my knowledge. I haven't looked like recently, but I've been
They're
out there.
free.
I'm not sure what that is. There wasn't for the longest time, but
You may wanna speak to your client. because-
when you say trailer, I mean, are they,
Connex box?
like a Connex box? Yeah.
I don't know what Xbox is.
An overseas container, we're gonna take that.
Shipping containers.
Shipping container.
There were 4, there are now 3.
Okay,
All right, I don't know what they are. I'll find out.
thank you. And I guess there's an indication that one of the earlier planning board approvals, there was a restriction that it was supposed to be for agricultural purposes only. So I'll have to review that, and then, I'll certainly give you the heads up and we'll talk about it.
They may have been also, a deed- they may have been.
Well, not a deed restriction, it appears that, there may have been, a section of the land that was, restricted by a planning board approval for agricultural use only. And then the question is, if that's so, which area is it? And is that part of the area that's gonna be disturbed?
It's a year later.
Just to see if there's some sort of restriction.
When was that approved?
I don't have the specifics. I've just been handed a note that indicates that there's a lot of minutes where this land has been previously reviewed by the planning board, and they have some sort of restriction. Listen, we know that there were deed restrictions, but that's nature conservancy stuff. You already addressed that.
Mhm.
So I don't see that as being particularly problematic. And candidly, a planning board from 20 years ago placing restriction on land, depending upon the rationale for it, that may be something that you can modify, 20 years later.
Yeah.
So I have to look into it.
Certainly, I don't know the timing, but we've had multiple revisions of the zone,
Right.
so it's a commercial
I actually,
zone.
listen,
yeah.
I have, on behalf of a client who happens to be looking at land in the town of Deerpark, planning board in it was like 1978, 79, put a restriction on a piece of property saying that it had to remain open and vacant. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but, now they're looking at the property saying, kind of why?
Yeah.
So that's likely to come back to the planning board and see if they can get that restriction lifted. I think that over a substantial period of time, depending upon the rationale, the restrictions can be lifted. So I need to do that research, and I'll share that with you, John, so that you can address it, if need be at the next
Okay.
meeting.
You see, a smart developer would have had
Yeah, after you get close to it.
an attorney read all the deeds.
All right, anything else for Rivendale? John, got anything else? Any
No,
comments
that's
from the
it.
board?
So, I guess, I'll talk to Al's office as to when
Okay.
the part 2 will be done, and then we certainly, obviously, will be back and forth.
Okay.
And I'll try to get the information about the things that I raised, so
Mhm.
that you'll have it in advance.
All right, so we'll close the discussion. It's just one question, John, it's nothing to do with anything before us tonight, but it did come up, and you were the representative for, 136 Burma Road. That was, that the building was made into 4
Yeah.
dwellings.
Yeah.
Schmidt.
Schmidt, I'm sorry, yes. We got the blank DOT permit sent to us. Is there one that was filled out? and signed?
Yeah, he's got the use and occupancy permit approval. He had to fill it out, I'm not sure why it got sent to you blank. He had to fill it out, pay the fee, and then the permit would be in
Right,
place.
and
Yeah.
just so you know, I believe I sent an email to Amanda, I think, that basically said, I need to see the filled-in form
Correct.
and a copy of the check.
Yeah.
Because those were, because it basically says, we're granting the permit subject to payment of the fee.
Right.
So show me you paid the fee, and then I'm happy.
I was just kinda curious why we sent the blank.
I'm not sure either, you know, Mr. Schmidt received that directly, and I don't know if he got
Well,
anxious.
you Ed said he was forthcoming, so
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sure we'll get yours eventually.
Okay.
You get that in, we'll take care of that prints for you.
Yeah, get that little stamp, right?
Well, John, thanks for your time tonight.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
I guess, we have the approval of two minutes, 2 meeting minutes tonight. It's the, April